Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. No matter the time of day or where you're joining us from, as always, we thank you for being here. I'm your host, Steve Henning, and you've tuned into the podcast that covers numerous topics, but all related to the commercial vehicle industry. Today, we're going to dive into a topic that's been, quite frankly, in the news, I think, every day for the last few months at least, and I'm talking about tariffs. It's a topic that's really impacting our industry, a bit of a yo-yo effect, I think, at times, but it's no question impacting our industry. And I'm grateful, as always, that we have with us today Kathryn Schifferle, the founder and chief vision officer of Work Truck Solutions, and I know she's incredibly passionate about work trucks and vans. Kathryn, thanks for joining us.
It's always a delight to talk about what's going on in this space right now. And like you said, Steve, hot topic, but what's interesting is it's almost like there's lots of things happening and talking about it, but nobody really wants to think about it.
I agree with you. So maybe just a real quick history, and I learned this from our friend Jim Press. Tariffs, they're not new. And that I knew. I was well aware of that. But he talked about the so-called chicken tax. That was one I was not aware of until he enlightened me a little bit. And for those of you watching this or listening, if you're not aware, I'll give you the real quick 30-second rundown. So back in the 60s, there was the introduction of what was referred to as the chicken tax. And it was really a tariff centered around chickens, but specifically it was those exported by the U.S. to Europe, and in a retaliatory move, that's a hard word to say, Kathryn, in a retaliatory move, the U.S. then imposed tariffs on light trucks coming from Europe, and that's really, quite frankly, what shaped a lot of the automotive space and kind of how we think about things today. And that was back in the 60s, so we're talking almost 50 years ago, but still impacting us today. Hard to believe.
I agree. And actually, as you were talking about that, and you mentioned Jim, my very first vehicle was a Toyota Corona. And even when I just started college, and even then I looked and said, oh my goodness, look at this foreign company coming in and selling things very inexpensively into our world. Don't they know that this is going to change things and change, make a difference? And they had a very long strategy, right? And so I have a quote for you.
Okay.
I collect quotes.
I know you love quotes.
This is my favorite one about tariffs. The elephant continues to walk while the dogs bark. And I love that because it's true. The concept that as an industry, we just keep going, right? We have to keep going. It's such an important industry in the United States. I mean, so foundational. It's complex, and so nothing's going to change overnight.
Right.
And manufacturers can't change overnight. The whole element of what they do is embedded in equipment and investments and long-term improvements and all sorts of things. That's the complexity, of course. So dogs are barking over here and over here, and to me, whenever I see, so I would call this a slow crisis, right? This is we've had some big ones, haven't we? Like,
sure.
Hey Steve, go home.
Yeah,
sorry,
that was a big one.
Can't do anything else. Just go home and wait there. But this is more, in my mind, an opportunity that's too easy to not think about it, or too easy to get panicked about it. And that's what I meant by dealers are they're hoping, they're trying not to panic. They know that they have to keep doing business. But for me, whenever I see a crisis, whether it's big or small, my first reaction is, aha, there is an opportunity somewhere in that. Because human nature is just like that. They either ignore it for as long as they can until it hits them over the head, or they start reacting Chicken Little, speaking of chickens, sky falling. And so what's really a great opportunity here is to understand how to position your business in a way that helps your customers, that helps them understand whether there's impact for them, and also helps them understand that you're there to continue to support their primary goal, which is running their business, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think, that's one of the values that Work Truck Solutions provides to dealers, is that we're always thinking outside of the box. We're always thinking outside of the day-to-day grind that they have to keep doing, right? We're thinking, oh, well, but what could we do? How could we help? And I think your team actually had support banners and messages out a month ago or more.
That's about right. Yeah.
To help dealers if they wanted, first of all, to help dealers think. Because that's one of the things that we do. We go, hey, have you thought about maybe talking this way? Or have you thought about how your customer is feeling right now and what maybe they need to hear? And even if they say, well, no, I think that we don't want to draw attention to it, I think that what we're doing is still helping them understand that it's there, you can't ignore it.
Right.
And that there are different ways to help and take advantage. There's two ways to look at it. One way is you're helping, the other way is taking advantage of a situation. I got to say, the word crisis to me means opportunity, because people change during crisis. They don't change when everything's going normal.
There's no reason to.
There's no reason to. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Kathryn, I read something last week, and it was, for the most part, it was talking about customer reviews and the fact that I think the sentiment from several customer reviews was that tariffs were starting to kind of creep into that narrative and so forth. And in the article I read, it offered a few pieces of advice, and I wanted to get your take on this. And I think I already know based on what you just outlined, but I'll read a couple of bullet points that were in there. So one of the things they said was be proactive, train your team, make sure that they're ready to have these conversations with customers. It was also get ahead of the narrative, right? So be proactive about it. Highlight U.S. built units, which, depending on your manufacturer, there's, either a easier or more difficult way to do that. And then, of course, monitor reviews. So I'm really curious, those bullet points, you've already outlined some of your feelings on that, but are there any takeaways that you have there, or are there other bits of feedback that maybe you're hearing from some of your customers already of here's what we're specifically doing?
Well, one of the things, we've been very generic in our conversation so far. What we didn't say here is that our customers, commercial customers, are different. The customers themselves are different. They're businesses, right?
Right.
And so we read a lot about automotive, and 98% of it's about retail. And the effect that it's going to have on consumers either deciding to purchase a vehicle now or holding off, what kind of pricing changes there will be, et cetera, right? Let's not forget that our customers do not have that, the liberty to make decisions based upon timing outside of their business needs.
Right.
If they get up in the morning, one of two things could be happening. One, they could have a vehicle down, in which case they're losing anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 a day, right? Plus the kind of other effects that it has on their business and their loyalty of their customers, right? The other thing that could happen is they could see a new opportunity. And, every one of, these businesses that range anywhere from small businesses that do things like catering or small, local delivery, all the way up to, medium-sized businesses that are doing construction and things, all the way up to big businesses that are delivering big products and that are, doing repairs on wires. And I mean, just there's so many of them and they all need a vehicle. Like tell me any business that isn't going to assign a vehicle for the work that they need to do, whether there's going to be multiple people in that vehicle or not, that vehicle has to be there, right?
That's right.
So, it's not the same. And one of the things that I really feel passionate about helping dealers understand today is how uniquely different those customers are.
Mm-hmm.
So back to your question, which is how do you leverage what's going on? How do you look at this crisis as an opportunity? If it was me, I would actually be asking my business customers how it's affecting them. I would ask them, because guess what? They're all going to have a different answer. And and there's nothing better than learning more about your customers. And there's nothing better than your customers knowing that you care and that you're listening to them specifically.
I couldn't agree with you more. And you jokingly talked about, gosh, do you remember when the crisis was go home?
Yeah.
So what was one of the things that was the advice that I heard repeatedly for anybody and everybody in the dealership space was, even if you don't have inventory, talk to your customers, talk to them about what they need, what their plans are, make sure that you're transparent in saying, we have this inventory on lot, or we don't, or I can help order something, but be very transparent and talk to them about what do they need and how you might be able to help. But that's a great strategy versus the bury your head in the sand and do nothing.
Yes. And, we did something pretty, I think, okay, I'm going to do a little, shining my nails, but we launched in 21, we launched something that helped find vehicles, but we also launched a focus around helping dealers talk to their customers about having a different strategy in their ownership, that of thinking, instead of waking up in the morning and saying, oh, I got an opportunity or I got a problem, helping them become more strategic in their thinking. Right. And thinking through, like, what are my plans? How far in advance can I make them? If I can just lengthen that time a little bit, it opens up a lot more opportunities for me as a business. And I feel very proud of helping dealers start changing that attitude in the market, that they needed to do that, because it was really hard on dealers to have business customers come and have nothing on the lot. It was like, we didn't want the dealers to be blamed for that in any way, shape, or form.
Sure.
So this is kind of, I see part of what's happening here as a next level opportunity. If you've done that or tried to do that or whatever, and now you can say, we don't know. I mean, you can literally say, I'm just thinking about you. We aren't sure. We aren't sure today because it is so yo-yo, right?
Right.
We know that, we know in general prices go up, but we don't know how much this is going to affect things. We know that in the past we've had, vehicles that weren't as available because of supply chain issues. We don't know if that's going to happen. What we do know is what we have right now, right? And we can help you determine if there's a strategy to do it sooner than later. And we can also help you plan so that you can get orders in earlier, so that you can know that you're going to be covered in 6 months or 3 months or whatever. And I mean, these are very practical, pragmatic, business-like conversations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that, all of what you just said makes just a tremendous amount of sense. And oh, by the way, if you're in the dealership space, there's also this little thing called service. Maybe you can talk to your customers about, well, if we get your fleet on a maintenance program, perhaps we can extend the life of some of those.
Exactly.
If purchasing a vehicle is not in the cards for you right now.
I'm really glad that you jumped forward to that, because that was kind of where I was heading next, is that full relationship with that customer, right? And I know it's hard in the dealership right now because the departments are very diverse and they're not really interconnected, but dealers are smart. typically very smart. And if they can start, I know there was a big article in Automotive News today about one of our dealers and what they've done to build out their really their operations on service for commercial vehicles. And it's a dedication to understanding that service for businesses is mega more important. Back to that idea of every day you're losing money that you're down. And so I was really enjoyed that article. And of course it segued a little bit into mobile service and how a dealer can leverage serving out to customers. But you got to think differently, because you got to do stuff on the weekend then, because but think of going to a place and having 30 vehicles to service instead of having to drive around and do them, individually. It's a pretty no-brainer to me to really start understanding the customer.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And if this is the impetus for that for some percentage of people, maybe it's not such a bad thing.
I would love to offer to anyone who's interested, has questions. We have a playbook, we have some processes, we have some benchmarks, we have some best practices, we have all sorts of material that we've compiled that we continue to update but honestly a lot of it is very standard. It's but sometimes it takes looking at something that another dealer's done, we have really great case studies, and saying, well, yeah, they were able to do that, so I can too. And so I think that's where I would kind of end with with our conversation today, is just a broad offer that if somebody wants to talk about it and what they could do or the kind of help that they might need, we're here.
Well, I think that's a great way to end. And maybe just to provide a kind of a little bow to wrap this up here, I think what I heard are three things. One would be find a good partner. So if you're a business and you're looking for a dealership to partner with, find a good partner. And if you're a dealership, make sure you're partnering with your customers, but also find maybe somebody like Work Truck Solutions to partner with you in the commercial space. Be transparent in your level of communication and what you talk to your customers about, and then be flexible. Not every customer is the same, right? They all have different needs. So make sure you hear what their needs are and then try to address those.
B2B, baby.
B2B. Excellent. Well, Kathryn, thanks so much for spending a few minutes. Maybe we'll revisit this again in a few months if tariffs are still something we're talking about every day.
Sounds good, Steve. Thanks.
Thank you.